The Untamed Mind, Dhammapada Verse 35, The Architecture of Mind. Where the mind goes before we do. Almost everyone has experienced it. You begin reading a page, listening to a friend, or simply watching the rain outside your window. Then, without warning, your mind slips away. A memory appears. An old argument resumes. Tomorrow's uncertainty quietly replaces today's reality. Several moments pass before you realize you have been somewhere else entirely. The Buddha saw this long before the world became filled with endless notifications and distractions. He understood that the restless mind is not a modern problem, but a deeply human one. It moves quickly, attaching itself to whatever promises pleasure, certainty, or protection, rarely asking whether the journey is necessary. Today's reflection begins in a quiet village during the Buddha's lifetime, where a monk became frightened not by danger, but by his own thoughts. His story reveals a truth that reaches far beyond monasteries and meditation. It invites us to ask a simple question. If the mind can wander without our permission, what does it truly mean to train it? A village where practice could flourish. During one rainy season, 60 monks sought meditation guidance from the Buddha before traveling to the peaceful village of Madika at the foot of a mountain. The villagers welcomed them warmly, and Madhyamata, the mother of the village headman, devoted herself to supporting their practice. She provided food, arranged a monastery where they could stay undisturbed, and eventually asked to learn meditation herself. Practicing with remarkable sincerity, she contemplated the changing nature of the body until her understanding became exceptionally clear. As her awareness deepened, she seemed to recognize the needs of the monks before they spoke, quietly providing exactly what helped their practice continue. When the rainy season ended, the monks returned to Jetavana filled with gratitude, speaking not only of the village's generosity, but also of the extraordinary peace that sincere practice had awakened there. When curiosity turns into fear. Among those listening to their account was another monk who became deeply curious. Inspired by what he had heard, he received a meditation subject from the Buddha and journeyed to the same village. Everything unfolded just as the others had described. Madhyamata welcomed him kindly. His daily needs were quietly met, and the peaceful surroundings seemed ideal for meditation. Yet one thought gradually took hold of his mind. The monks had spoken of the woman's unusual insight, and he began wondering whether she could truly perceive the thoughts of others. When he finally asked, she answered only with a gentle smile, explaining that a mind cultivated through deep practice often understands more than words reveal. She offered nothing more. Yet that single conversation changed everything. From that moment onward, every passing thought felt exposed, and the monk found himself fearing not the woman before him, but the restless activity within his own mind. The Buddha's quiet instruction. Unable to find peace, the monk returned to the Buddha and confessed his fear. He believed he could no longer remain in the village because his own thoughts might be seen. The Buddha did not question the woman, nor did he dismiss the monk's anxiety. Instead, he directed attention toward something far more important. Return, he instructed, and keep your mind upon your meditation. His advice was striking in its simplicity. The problem was not the village, the woman, or even the thoughts themselves. The real difficulty lay in the habit of following every thought as though it were the truth. A wandering mind had transformed a place of peace into a place of fear. By returning to the village instead of escaping it, The monk would begin learning that freedom is not found by changing our circumstances. It begins when we learn to understand the movements of our own mind. The mind that never stays still. The Buddha then spoke the verse that has guided practitioners for centuries. The mind is difficult to control. Swift and subtle, it moves wherever it pleases. Yet a well-trained mind brings happiness. The teaching was not offered as a criticism of the mind, but as an observation of its nature. Like the wind passing through a forest, the mind rarely remains where we expect it to stay. It moves toward pleasure, retreats from discomfort, and clings to whatever promises certainty. Left unnoticed, this constant wandering quietly shapes the way we experience the world. The monk's fear had not arisen because of another person's insight. It arose because his attention followed every thought as though it deserved belief. The Buddha invited him to discover a different relationship with the mind. One built not upon fear or suppression, but upon careful observation. Thoughts are visitors, not identity. One of the easiest mistakes we make is believing that every thought reveals who we are. A moment of anger convinces us that we are angry people. A fearful imagination persuades us that danger is near. A selfish impulse appears, and we immediately judge our entire character. Yet the Buddha encouraged a far gentler understanding. Thoughts arise because countless conditions come together. They appear, linger briefly, and fade, often without our invitation. A clear mind learns to witness these movements without immediately claiming them as me or mine. Just as clouds pass across an open sky without changing the sky itself, thoughts pass through awareness without defining the person who notices them. Happiness begins when we stop confusing passing mental weather with our deepest nature. Why fighting the mind never works. Many people imagine that training the mind means forcing it into silence. They struggle against unwanted thoughts, hoping that enough determination will eventually produce peace. Yet the harder they resist, the stronger those thoughts often become. The Buddha chose another path. He never asked the monk to wage war against his own mind. He simply instructed him to return, observe, and begin again whenever attention wandered. There is profound wisdom in that simplicity. Every gentle return weakens the habit of distraction without creating a new habit of resistance. The mind is not transformed by harsh discipline, but by patient familiarity. Over time, awareness becomes less interested in chasing every passing impulse, and more content to remain where life is actually unfolding. The practice is quiet, almost ordinary, yet its results gradually reshape the whole experience of living. The quiet habit of returning. Every time you notice your mind has wandered, something remarkable has already happened. Awareness has awakened. Although your thoughts may have traveled far into memory, imagination, or worry, the simple recognition that they have wandered marks the beginning of freedom. Many people treat distraction as failure, but the Buddha saw it differently. Each return is itself an act of training. It is not the wandering that shapes the mind, but the willingness to come back without irritation or self-judgment. Think of a parent gently guiding a child learning to walk. The child stumbles countless times, yet no loving parent scolds every fall. They simply encourage another step. The mind deserves the same patience. Every calm return strengthens steadiness far more than frustration ever could. The cost of a scattered attention. Our age offers the wandering mind more invitations than any generation before us. A single notification interrupts a conversation. One headline leads to another. Moments later, we are no longer living our own lives, but reacting to the lives, opinions, and fears of countless strangers. Hours disappear, leaving behind a vague feeling of exhaustion without accomplishment. The Buddha could not have known smartphones or social media, yet he understood the principle perfectly. Whatever repeatedly captures attention gradually shapes the mind itself. A mind constantly pulled outward becomes restless even in silence. A mind that learns to pause before following every impulse slowly rediscovers its natural clarity. Peace is not created by escaping the modern world, but by choosing where attention is allowed to rest. What we feed begins to grow. Imagine two gardens growing side by side. One is tended with care, watered regularly, and cleared of weeds before they spread. The other is left unattended, allowing every seed carried by the wind to take root. After many seasons, the difference is impossible to ignore. The mind develops in much the same way. Every repeated thought, every familiar resentment, every act of gratitude, every moment of kindness gradually becomes easier to revisit. Habits of mind are not created overnight. They are cultivated through quiet repetition. This is why the Buddha placed such importance on attention. Whatever we repeatedly nourish becomes the landscape in which we eventually live. Training the mind is therefore less about forcing change than about choosing, again and again, which qualities deserve our care. Compassion grows through compassionate moments. Patience grows through patient responses. The mind becomes what it repeatedly practices. The weight of comparison. A restless mind rarely remains content with simply seeing. Almost without noticing, it begins measuring. Someone appears more successful, more admired, more peaceful, or more fortunate, and the quiet comparison begins. What was enough a moment ago suddenly feels incomplete. The world itself has not changed. Only the mind has shifted from appreciation to comparison. The Buddha understood that comparison is another way the mind wanders from reality. It leaves the life before us and enters an imagined life that belongs to someone else. In doing so, it overlooks the only place where wisdom can grow, the present moment. A well-trained mind does not deny another person's happiness, nor does it diminish its own. It simply learns to rejoice without measuring, allowing contentment to arise from gratitude rather than competition. The freedom of letting go. Many of the thoughts that disturb us are not new. They are familiar visitors returning to the same well-worn paths. We replay old conversations, revisit disappointments, and rehearse arguments that have long since ended. The mind believes that one more journey through the past will finally produce peace. Instead, it often deepens the very habits that keep suffering alive. The Buddha did not teach forgetting, he taught releasing. To let go is not to pretend that nothing happened. It is to recognize that carrying yesterday's burdens into today does not change the past. It only obscures the present. Like a traveler who gradually removes unnecessary weight from a heavy pack, the mind becomes lighter each time it loosens its grip on what no longer serves understanding. A mind that becomes a friend. The monk eventually returned to the village, just as the Buddha had instructed. This time he did not concern himself with whether anyone could perceive his thoughts. He simply practiced. Day after day, he returned his attention to the meditation object whenever it wandered. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, fear gave way to clarity. The same village that once seemed unsettling became the place where his understanding matured. And in time he attained complete liberation. His transformation reminds us that the greatest changes are often the quietest. A well-trained mind is not one that never wanders, but one that no longer follows every wandering thought. Instead of becoming an unpredictable master, the mind becomes a trusted companion, steady enough to meet joy without clinging and sorrow without despair. Such a mind does not escape life. It learns to live it with wisdom. The happiness of a well-trained mind. The Buddha concluded his verse with a promise that is both simple and profound. A well-trained mind brings happiness. Notice that he did not say a wealthy mind, a brilliant mind, or a mind that always gets what it wants. Happiness does not arise because life becomes free from difficulty. It arises because the mind no longer adds unnecessary suffering to what life already brings. When the mind is steady, success does not inflate the ego, and failure does not diminish one's worth. Praise is received with gratitude, criticism with reflection, and uncertainty with patience. The circumstances of life will continue to change, just as the seasons change without asking our permission. Yet a trained mind discovers something deeper than changing circumstances. It discovers an inner stability that is no longer dependent upon them. Seeing clearly is the beginning of freedom. Perhaps the greatest gift of the Buddha's teaching is that it asks us to begin exactly where we are. There is no need to wait until the mind becomes perfectly calm before practicing awareness. Restlessness itself becomes the teacher. Each wandering thought becomes another opportunity to notice. Each moment of impatience reveals another place where wisdom can quietly enter. This is why meditation is far more than sitting with closed eyes. It continues while waiting in traffic, listening to a loved one, answering an unexpected criticism, or sitting alone in silence at the end of the day. Every ordinary moment offers the same invitation to notice where the mind has gone and gently return to what is real. In that quiet returning, understanding grows almost unnoticed, like a seed becoming a tree through countless unseen days. Coming home to the present. The story of the frightened monk is, in truth, the story of every one of us. We spend much of our lives trying to manage the world around us, believing that peace depends upon better circumstances, better people, or better outcomes. Yet the Buddha gently turned the monk back toward the only place where lasting freedom could be found, his own mind. The wandering mind will always offer another memory to revisit, another fear to entertain, another desire to pursue. It is simply its nature. Our freedom does not come from preventing those movements, but from seeing them clearly, without becoming their captive. Little by little, awareness grows steadier than distraction, wisdom quieter than fear, and compassion stronger than judgment. Nothing outside may appear different. The world continues with its joys and uncertainties, but perception has changed. And when perception changes, the whole experience of living changes with it. That is the quiet freedom the Buddha pointed toward, not by controlling life, but by seeing it clearly. This is Buddha Reflections, where philosophy, insight, and lived experience meet to explore mind, impermanence, and release. Thanks for your time. It's been a delight. What should we explore next? Comment, share, and save your insight. Subscribe to Orbital Dharma and keep your thoughts bright.